Pretty soon we'll be ready to talk to some nice people. Well,
Hey,
good morning. I'm Jeffrey Daugherty, your friendly neighborhood Christian whistleblower. I'm here today with R. Wayne Steiger for our Not Your Normal Sunday morning show. Sorry that last week I was without power and not able to be a part of the meeting, but Wayne, it's great to be back with you.
hey, Jeff, and good to have you back, buddy. So how was the adventure?
You know, by the time it got here, it was nothing but a kind of a strong summer thunderstorm. So for some reason, though, it knocked out the power. My mother's power was out for a week. My power was out for maybe an hour. I didn't have internet for a few days, but I was able to suffer through that.
Whoa.
So, you know, when we started that whole intention thing, it was a Cat 5 storm. By the time we were finished and George Norrie was finished, it was just another Sunday thunderstorm. So I feel very positive about what we were able to accomplish, and it gives me excitement for what's possible to accomplish in the future.
Yeah, I'll tell you, there is the phrase I like to use is unlimited potential.
There really is unlimited potential. There's no doubt about that.
No doubt about it. Well, good. You know, in fact, I wanted to make a note that, who was it? It was on the Drudge Report that they said that the Tampa Bay area basically came out unscathed.
I would concur with that.
Yeah, that you guys were like this island that had this spear of immunity around it.
Isn't that interesting?
Mm-hmm. That's how I kind of look at it.
And I'm going to have to go to Drudge Report and take a look at that.
Yeah, and you know, you live in Clearwater. That was supposed to be like off the map, right?
Yeah, this was supposed to be, you know, the storm of the century. It was supposed to be the worst thing ever, and, you know, widespread death and destruction. And unfortunately, there were people that were, you know, affected very adversely by the storm. And I wish that they had not been. But I mean, you know, with that being said, I wish we could have maybe done better. But I think what we did was pretty good and pretty impressive and pretty empowering.
You know, Jeff, how I look at it is that for me, it showed that we could actually build a spear, a bubble. Now, if you can begin to expand that out with more numbers, with a little bit more, as people become more confident that this in fact does work, it's just not a theory, right? And good tangible results can result.
Absolutely. And you can't argue with the results. And, you know, I'm very, very happy about it. Someone in the chat room says it's surreal. It's like the storm never even happened here. She's also in the extended Tampa Bay area, not quite here.
Yeah.
Everything's cleaned up. Gas prices are still a little high. You know, people are taking advantage of a profit motive. But
sure,
you know, with all due respect to the people that were forecasting gloom and doom, the day before the storm, I was able to fill up my car with gas. I was able to buy water. And it just really wasn't the horrific event for us here in Tampa Bay that everybody was saying that it was.
Excellent. I'm telling you, it's exciting.
It really is.
Yeah. You know, we're doing over on my channel, the Core 100 group, and we've got 25, 26 people that are already a part of this. And
tell us what that is, Wayne.
Well, we're going to actually form a core of 100 individuals. And what we're going to do is focus in on our group first. I feel that it's like exercising. You go to the gym, you're there to begin to build repetition, to begin to get strength. I think the same way goes with collective consciousness. As we begin to train our individual consciousness on one individual, let's say, Jeff, a person has a financial need, right?
Yes.
And so, as I told everyone, what we have to do is get real specific about the issue. So let's just say a hypothetical. We have someone that has a need for $100.
Okay.
So what we do is that the group, and it's not at a specific time. What I am trying to encourage is everyone is that this can be a 24/7. Because we're constantly thinking. And so let's say we have John. John is the person who we are focusing in on meeting his needs at this point. So when I just start thinking of John, we all share the picture, so we know what John looks like. I can just think $100. You know, listen, the universe is not, let's say, lacking for anything.
That's right.
So as each person in the group. As we get our group healed, so to speak, then we'll start branching out. And, you know, it's kind of like the student teaching the student. And then as the student becomes the apprentice and becomes a journeyman, well, as you graduate to become a journeyman, we like to take up an apprentice.
Absolutely.
So that is what the Core 100 group is about.
Sounds amazing. And, you know, you wonder about the stuff we're doing. And I got a letter here. Actually, somebody actually sent me a handwritten letter. And it says, we truly enjoy the work you do and appreciate when you read the chat questions and then answer. So people like to be involved, Wayne. I think you're hitting on something there. Most of the time I watch it after the live stream, so I miss all the questions and comments. But when you read them and answer them, it's great for those of us who aren't watching it live. Keep up the great work. And I think we should pat ourselves on the back for all the souls who were helped during Irma.
I agree. I agree.
That's nice.
You know, it's that type, and this is what I look at it, Jeff. It's faith building. Listen, faith, you know, it has no boundary. So I say, let's get this collective consciousness working. Let's counter, like up in St. Louis. Now,
put that in there too. That was very nice.
Hey, that's very good. That there are places that I think that we could begin to come collectively. And if a city is hurting, and that's what happens when I see these emotional outbreaks, is that those are just people who are hurting. There is a core reason at some base, Jeff, that is causing this type of division.
Absolutely. And welcome to Heidi Vandenberg, who just checked in the chat room.
Hey, Heidi, how are ya?
And I'm glad Heidi was able to, I mean, up there, she was worried about the storm turning her way, but of course it didn't. So we're happy for Heidi as well.
Yeah. And, you know, how interesting that we kind of lead into this, because we are learning collectively that we can change, and we can change events in the timeline of history.
And Cliff Desmond, famous South Florida radio personality in the house as well.
Hey, hello. How are you doing, Cliff? Good to see you. So listen, I keep on telling people it only takes less than 1%, Jeff.
That's
1%.
right.
1%.
It only takes 100 monkeys, Wayne.
Well, you know, I'm still, listen, my dog trains me really good. So there's hope in that.
He does.
So I think that as we continue to learn that, number one, I just did a video yesterday on frequency, that how hate is actually at the baseline. It's very dense. It's very negative. And when it gets like that, it's kind of like at the end of the trash pile. And in order to break that up, you have to bring in the higher frequencies that can begin, I kind of look at it, scour it out. And so when we scour it out, what do we replace it with?
Wayne, am I right in assuming that a dense frequency can travel pretty well and through great distances?
Water.
Yeah.
Water and air.
So when we allow hate to build, that's why it just speaks to me. That's one of the main reasons why hate is one of the main things that all the powers that be, whether they be cultural, whether it be social, whether they be religious, you know, it's us versus them. They're trying to do everything they can to keep us in hate mode. And I'm trying to do everything I can and help. Cliff helped put me on this road. We're trying to do everything we can to reach out to females. We're trying to do everything we can to reach out to people of color. We're trying to do everything we can to expand this truth movement and expand this enlightenment movement that we have, because there's so many people out there. For some reason, you know, females and people of color are underrepresented in our genre. And we really want to, we're missing out on a great resource, and we're better together. You know, no one's free till we're all free. And we're doing all we can to reach out and bring in the goddesses and bring in the folks that don't look like you and me, Wayne, so we can have a broader diversity, and a broader diversity of ideas and opinions, and a broader diversity of talents and inspiration. So I'm really working hard to do that. And I encourage anyone that knows of people that, you know, are, you know, and we're not trying to do set asides and quotas, but we're just trying to reach out to everybody. So let me know, include me in if you know of any people of that nature.
Yes, I think that's excellent. And listen, Jeff, it gets back to the fact that we are a species. We don't see ourselves as a species.
We really don't.
Has many races. It has diversity. And that's what makes it unique. Even if you look at, for instance, the insects, the ant kingdom, they're a species with many different races, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So I just kind of look at it as an opportunity that if we could learn what's right in front of us, yep, and then say, okay, well, yeah, that makes sense. That's nature.
You know, Wayne, if we were on another planet, if for some reason, you know, we went to the moon of Saturn, if we went to Titan or whatever, and we were living there and there wasn't any humans there, we were there with Saturnians or Arcturians or whoever it was, we were among those people and they were friendly and we were dealing with them and we were there for a couple of years and didn't see any human beings. The first human that we saw, if we saw a human 2-3 years down the road, if we looked at that person, we wouldn't say, oh, there's a black guy, there's a white guy, there's an Asian guy, there's a Mexican guy. We would say, look, there's a human, and we would instantly be drawn and have this affinity. So why, and that gives me chills to say that, why can't we get past this foolishness? And I know there's cultural differences, and I know there's ethnic differences, and you know the way we think and act and behave and the things that are normal to us. But if we were in another planet, it wouldn't be red, white, black, yellow. It would be just another guy, lady, just another fellow. And that's really where we need to get to.
Yeah. And I apologize, everyone. I really am suffering from ragweed allergies. But think about this.
Heidi, yes, how did Jenny come out? I know she was in an area that could be susceptible to the storm as well. So let us know if you can in the chat room how Jenny Moonstone fared, please, Heidi.
Yeah, yeah. You know, when you were just talking about that, I kind of look at, all right, you brought up all the complexity of the issues that I think our species is facing right now. Is that a result of awakening, awareness, or is it something else that instead of unifying, it's dividing? And if it's dividing, why?
Well, I know this, Wayne. Travis Thorpe is also in the chat room, and he is a Triskelion priest. He's a Freemason. He has, I guess he calls it a coven. I hope I'm not using the wrong words, but I know within that tradition, they have black folks, white folks, Mexican folks, transgendered folks, gay folks, bisexual folks, you know, the whole LBGT and the Q and the U. And when they get in and do their rituals, it's, you know, it's just a group. And Travis and I were talking the other day, and people of different types of point of views bring different types of energies. And we really do exclude people at our own loss, because just because we don't understand something and we're not comfortable with it, we tend to push it aside. But if we'll bring everybody in, we will begin to notice some real things. And to me, I see it as all positive. I'm not sure what you're thinking about how it could be a negative or a separation.
Well, I think it's like, all right, let me digress. I was going yesterday. I had to go to the dentist.
And Jenny Moonstone is good. We're hearing from
excellent, excellent. And as we're going there, and I hate dentists, I really do. God. So we're driving, and along the road, and I live up here in Denver, and Jeff, I'm looking over on the left side. I counted no less than 7 Gwyn towers. And I told my wife, I said, look at that. I said, they're everywhere. Now, if you understand what Gwyn is, it's this new frequency. It's where G5 is going to be going. I mean, right now, Comcast. I thought
you said Gwyn towers. You're saying Gwyn towers.
Gwyn towers. And it's amazing. Comcast is offering right now 1 gigabit downloads.
Wow.
Exactly. Wow. I remember back in the day when you still had to do dial-up.
I do too. I remember listening to that sound and
yes, you know,
AOL to come up.
Yes,
we're dating ourselves.
And I told my wife, I said, here's the problem, hon. We have no way of isolating ourselves from this electromagnetic soup.
You're right.
And Jeff, they have shown conclusively that there are, in fact, you can control the human brain by frequencies. And I believe that if I could irritate you to the point where you're like this, you got an itch that you can't scratch 24/7, eventually you're going to have a little bit of a psychotic episode on that.
Absolutely.
And I
wonder if they're trying to create that baseline of instability in people so we can get, and I mean, let's face it, they want these borderline psychotic type people to snap. And a lot of times they want to control them and control how and where they snap so they can control the narrative.
Well, there's a technology that DHS uses called Stingray, and it can actually see inside your homes. And it's just, here's the thing. And this is all related to what we were talking about, the collective consciousness. How do we alter the current mess that we created? Listen, any way you slice it and dice it, Jeff, mankind has created this reality that we're in.
Or at least allowed it to be created.
They're feeding off us, or, you know, we actually put it into our thought process and then we manifest it. Calling those things that be not as though they are. You know?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And what is faith? You know, faith is the evidence of things not seen, the conviction of their reality.
Absolutely.
So when we're talking about this electromagnetic soup that we're now in, I keep on reading more and more stories that, and the ages are getting lower and lower, 9 years old, that where the parents take away the cell phone, the electronic device, the child goes into an absolute rage. And you're seeing more and more of this. And I think that this is symptomatic of the fact that it's a culture where we have lost connection to what really makes us unique. And that's that diversity.
And it's no secret, and it's no wonder that, you know, Steve Jobs never allowed his kids to have iPhones.
Isn't that odd?
Pads.
Yeah, isn't that odd?
Yeah. But, you know, Wayne, in a weird sort of way, when we think about all of these, you know, technologies that are being, you know, fashioned to work against us, you know, the 5G, the Gwen, the Stingray, all of that, in the midst of all of that really bad stuff that is being, you know, foisted against us, it in a strange way, it excites me. In a strange way, it empowers me. In a strange way, it encourages me, because that's just conviction to me and confirmation to me that the energetic world is real, that the things that are unseen are real. And if they can take advantage of that and begin to leverage it against us, that just shows us that the things that we talk about, the woo-woo, the group consciousness, the core 100, the moving the storm, the actual getting together and focusing our intention, it's just as real as the Gwen. It's just as real as the Stingray, except we don't need towers because we've got each other. So they're confirming to us, guys, listen, what you have is real. What you have is powerful. What you have, we're afraid of. So we're trying to duplicate. They're trying to duplicate spiritual technology, Wayne. And I'm convinced that when you're duplicating it as technology without the spirituality, it's not as good. It's not as effective. It's not as powerful. So we've got the real deal. We've got the real McCoy. We've got the spiritual technologies. And if we learn to do the 12D shieldings, if we learn to do the bubble building, as you're talking about, as we learn to do the group consciousness experiments, as we learn to, I mean, we need to get like Doc Holliday and Wyatt Earp and the rest of those fellas at Tombstone. And we need to say, I'm your Huckleberry. And if they win, we need to get ready and we need to use our weapons. We need to draw. And I'm ready to say to the powers that be, say when.
Bingo. Bingo. You know, Jeff, I'm doing a series called The Secret Knowledge. And it's Time Magazine, I guess about, 10 years ago, came out with this thing called Secret Societies. And as I began to look at this, it's very interesting what secret societies are all about. It's about keeping a certain knowledge, and that certain knowledge is about us.
Yes, it is.
How we work. And I am convinced that, number one, if you know about it, it's not a secret society anymore, but I do believe they exist. And it's about controlling the energy.
Absolutely.
Now, I like to do a correlation of what, I know it's kind of going off veer here, but not really. September 23rd. You know, now it's in the freaking mainstream media. And I'm going,
I just did a radio show about it last night.
Did you? Well, send me the link on that. I'd like to listen to that.
Okay.
Are we looking at another Hellbop, another David Koresh situation that you've starting to now build this mania, and they have in here about Waco, what happened, with the whole apocalypse theme.
You want to hear something sad and scary, Wayne?
All right.
I was a Pentecostal minister, and I had come out of the Assemblies of God and was doing a lot of work with what they called Seventh-day Pentecostals, Sabbath-keeping Pentecostal people. And about 3 months before Waco, I got an email inviting me to come down and do a week-long teaching series. And the letter was from David Koresh.
Oh, whoa.
That tells you where I was.
Well, it also tells me that your destiny didn't lie in that path, but holy cow. Now, if you think in alternate realities that you probably could have gone down there and completely turned the events of history, I mean...
That would have been interesting, huh? And for some reason, I just didn't respond, because I normally would have said, sure, they were kind of Pentecostal, they were kind of quasi-Christian, and I was coming on the way out. I probably would have gone, but things just didn't work out that way. So it's just very, very interesting what a small world it really is. But I can't help, Wayne, but be encouraged as all these frequency technologies and all these invisible technologies start being aimed at us. It just confirms to me that spiritual technology is real, and we've got the real thing. And even their counterfeit is not going to be strong enough to overcome us if we get together, stay together, and start doing what we're supposed to do and living like we're supposed to live.
And, I had this conversation with the dentist of all things. We were talking about religion and its purpose. And he said, well, I'm not a very religious guy. And I said, well, neither am I. And he said, I can't ever figure out what is it for. He said, maybe to teach us morals. And I looked at him and I said, you don't need religion to teach you morals. If that's what your problem is, you're lacking empathy. And so he looked at me and he went, well, you know what? You're right. So he says, so why all the buildings? And I said, I don't know. Anyway, we digress on that point. But getting back to the point, we're learning to come together, Jeff.
We have to.
And I believe the positive thought of, all right, the scriptures that I've said, 1 can put 1,000 to flee, 2 can put 10,000, 3 would be 1 million, 4 would be, what is that, 100 million? Am I right on that?
Working out that math on my channel just a few days ago that came up. So
what'd you come up with?
Well, I'm a Bible college graduate, Wayne, not a math major. So I figured, with the Twitter and with the YouTube, we've got about 130,000 people. So that puts a lot to flight.
Yeah, it does. And you think about it. I did a thing on the angels, and according to John, he says that there is 10,000 times 10,000 times 1,000 times 1,000. That's what he counted in the heavenly host. That comes out to 100 trillion.
That's a lot.
That's a lot of hombres.
Now the question becomes, are those malevolent or benevolent hombres?
Well, I asked the question. We have our whole baseline of how we see this to our core is this, Jeff.
Just to break in, Wayne, somebody says they did the math, and they're saying that it would take about 900,000 of us to make everybody else flee.
There you go. Think about that.
8 billion, I guess. 900,000 versus 8 billion.
Think about that. That is such a small... That's why they fear us.
It really is.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Chris. So my question is, we have our core imagery of angels by everything that was done in the Dark Ages, from what the church came through and began to sweep through the artisans. And what we have is this imagery. And that forms our baseline if when I say angel. Now, modern day culture, through the use of television, has brought now a different one. When I say alien, you immediately think big eyes, gray. But here is the spell, as they would say. I think we're talking the same thing.
We are.
That's exactly.
We are.
Now, that then begins to beg the question, we know through angelic mythology, actually it's angelicologies because it actually does exist. There's angelic script that we know through many different sacred writings, they have a very complex society. Now, if there's 100 trillion of them, Jeff, I don't ever see our species ever getting to be 100 trillion. We're having a hard time to get to 10 billion and look at the mess.
Right.
Comment. So from, pardon?
What do you take from that?
Well, it really gets down to if you believe the fact that they exist. All right, number one. Now you can choose to say, well, I don't believe that there's angels, but I don't, yeah, there may be alien life. Well, okay, I can dig that. But I happen to think that they do exist. And I think that if they're at that number, my question to the audience is, what makes us so special that their attention seems to always be on us?
That's a great question. That's a great question. My skeptical mind says, how can we really trust the numbers that are listed in the scripture? But nonetheless, there's still a bunch of them.
Yeah, apparently.
And how is this interaction between us? And again, how many are for us and how many are against us?
And what God do they serve? And listen, you think about it. These are complex superior beings. They can exist in multi-dimensions. They can exist in multiple forms. They can shapeshift. They have the ability to be invisible. They have supernatural strength. If you go with the folklore, apparently wherever Gabriel shows up, your ass is fried, buddy, because you are out of the game. Because Gabriel always comes with death. And read the Old Testament. Yeah. Who was the one who slew the 180,000 Syrians that day?
Yeah. And Wayne, Travis makes a good point, and we're just talking. I think you're just talking about angelic beings. What about all these thought forms in Tolpe that also exist that are being manifested by the thoughts and intention of people like us? So there's a lot going on in the spiritual realm. There's no doubt about it.
Well, I think that when you finally get to that point where you awaken to what's going on, right, you begin to understand that you are a sentient, intelligent being. You're a light being. And I believe that that's what makes us very unique. I also believe that they're attracted to us, both good and bad.
What if it's because of this reason, Wayne? And this just popped into my head. The Elohim came here. The Elohim created us. They created us in their image after their likeness. What if Earth, or at least in this time of Earth, what if Earth is the place for the birth and training of Elohim, and all the rest of the spiritual entities know that this is the place for the birth and training of Elohim, and they know that even though we don't know it yet, we are Elohim in training, and we will one day be, like Christ said, you will be gods. Maybe that's the reason why they're so interested in us.
It's amazing because you and I haven't talked on this, but I actually put in there in the series I'm doing on the secret knowledge. Do you know what mankind, where collectively mankind, as they say in the Sefer, the infinite being sees man as a collective soul in a world of our own? What if, in fact, our destiny is to become a God, to sit at the table and take our rightful position of where our destiny is? Now, what if there are those who are at the table that don't want us not even in the room, buddy, much less at the table?
Yeah. And Travis says that that's what the Mormons teach, and that is what the Mormons teach, but just because the Mormons teach it doesn't necessarily mean it's wrong.
All right, now I'm going to interject something. What if all of that's nothing but BS? Because here's something. Have you ever heard of Graham Hancock?
I have heard of Graham Hancock.
All right, you know what happened then 12,800 years ago, where they found in Göbekli Tepe the German scientist, Mr.
I've got one of his books here I was looking for.
Yeah. So it was the German archaeologist who actually found the site, and it was with the German Archaeological Institute. The point is, we now know, this is what's so bizarre, Jeff. What if everything that you and I have been talking about, everyone in the chat rooms who's watching us, what if all of our belief systems are a manufactured, pre-programmed imagery? Because it is evident 12,800 years ago, the Earth was hit with a comet. Now, we did not discover these monuments until 2007.
Wayne, how do we know it's evident that that happened?
Well, we actually can now go back in, as Mr. Hancock done. I'll just show you one of the pictures here.
Okay.
There it is right there. Can you see that?
I can see it. Tell me what I'm looking at.
Well, what you're looking at is a comet hitting. That's the depiction of the civilization, mankind, seeing this coming in. And you can see that it shows an extinction level event happening. And I'll give you another picture here so you can actually see. This is was what they now know was a meeting place of those that knew when it was coming. They knew that this was happening. And apparently 9/10 of the Earth was destroyed. I have my little clip notes here.
About 13,000 years ago?
12,800, yeah.
Okay.
And there is a 1,200-year gap, and apparently we were smacked again. Now, this would actually go into the creation story, the deluge story. You know, I contend that Genesis 1 and Genesis 2 are two different creation events.
And there's no doubt about that textually.
Yeah, and so you look at Genesis 2:4, and it's very interesting how it says. It says that there was no plant. It was barren soil. Nothing was here. That only happens by fire, not flood. Something came through, and a comet would be the only thing that could actually do this. So the memories of the species were wiped out. How do we know that there was a change? We went from hunter-gatherers to where we became agrarian in our nature. Now, that's a huge leap when you begin to think about it as a civilization. That would move us from a class 2 to a class 3 civilization. And what that is huge leaps in consciousness, understanding.
What was the scripture reference you cited for the earth?
Yeah, Genesis 2:4.
The Genesis 2:4 is these are the generations of the heavens and the earth, and they were created in the day that the Lord made the heavens and the earth, every plant of the field before it was in the earth, and every herb of the field before it grew. But there was not a man to till the ground. So right. You're contending that ground means a bare ground.
Yeah, because you go up to Genesis 2:3, which actually should have gone to the end of Genesis 1, but they're
right.
And you can see that there's two distinct things. And by the way,
absolutely,
when you study Hebraic language, look how they changed the noun. It went from the heavens to the earth, from the earth to the heavens.
Right.
People miss that. They just go, whoosh, and I go, listen, they're telling you something here. This is two distinct creation events.
It absolutely is.
I think it was the 6-day people that got wiped out. Now, that
really?
Day, yes, sir. We don't have, listen, the 6-day people in Genesis 1:26, God, and I believe it was not the Elohim. I believe this is a different God here. I think there's a different set of gods that we're dealing with here. He did not breathe his spirit into them. He blessed them and sent them on their way and gave them dominion.
Hey, Wayne, I've just looked up that word, and it means dirt.
Yes.
Dust.
Ashes.
Yeah.
Actually, the actual word literally comes from ashes. From what? Where do we come from? From ashes to ashes?
Ashes, dust to dust.
Yes. You see, it's right there in front of us.
It's actually the same word used for man, Adam.
Yes. Are you getting it?
Yep.
So when we see the Genesis 126 people, they had dominion.
Mm-hmm.
God gave that to them, but he did not breathe into them. And so I keep on asking myself, all right, what is the difference between a God breathing into a body and simply creating it and blessing it? It's monumental.
What if the Genesis 126 were created of an entirely different stuff? What if the Genesis 126 were created as Elohim with the ability to manifest physically, and then the Genesis 2 ones were created out of the dust, and my contention is that he tricked free spirits of Genesis 126 people to go into those dirt people, and now we're stuck.
Take it a step further backwards. I say the Genesis 126 people were created from pure energy, pure earth.
I agree.
Not contaminated.
I agree 100%.
So that prana, what they say in the India, is that life force, that force that permeates everything, was of a pure nature.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So
now, is that the pure force from your chaos that was before light?
Yes. In which I contend the light that we interpret today is actually false light.
The light from the sun, you'd say, is false light?
Yeah, I mean, we have this weird perception is that is light. Well, listen, if in fact you take the story in Genesis 1 and it says in the beginning, right? We've talked about that. It says, and God said, let there be light. Well, hello. That simply says there was darkness. But if you're saying darkness is not light, then you are completely mistaken, because actually most light is invisible to us.
Interesting.
White light is in fact false light.
Right. So the light that was there, so really he turned on a light that us dummies could see, but that doesn't mean there wasn't always light.
Well, if you go by the stories in the Bronze Book, which I really love their vignettes of creation stories, the first man and the first group of animals was not able to live in this artificial light from the sun. They perished. And they had to go back to the drawing board, and God had to go back and now recreate a being and an animal life form that could actually exist in this light.
Interesting. And then you've got the whole lore of people living under the ground. Are they there to avoid that light?
Well, actually, you bring up a very good question. Who was the reseeders?
Explain the reseeders to me.
So now there is a thought. Okay, let me just digress one step backwards. I have been wrestling with this, with the subscribers on my channel, challenging them for this. How can all these different gods of all the different races be all right or all wrong? Something isn't right here. There is something. Listen, if you're saying that the Hebrew God is the only God, then I challenge you to tell me, then who is Lord Krishna? Because his story comes before the Hebrew God.
That's right.
Now, I am doing this series. Tell me then why it says in the Vedic and also in the Bhagavad Gita about the nuclear wars.
Yeah.
You see, we can't ignore this any longer. And, listen, I think we've done a terrible disservice to the culture of India. I believe that they offer to mankind a key component to the amnesia that we suffer from, Jeff.
And I'm right now in the midst of a very deep study of the Hindu and the Indian thought, so I totally concur with you. And here's the fact, Wayne, that no one wants to talk about. I have 2 years of anthropology on the collegiate level, so I know just enough anthropology to get myself in trouble. But humans capable of supporting culture on this planet, about 50,000 years we've been capable of supporting culture. For 50,000 years. The earliest onset or arrival of anything remotely resembling monotheism was about maybe 10,000 years ago at the most. So for 4/5 of our existence, this idea of monotheism, be it Judaism, be it Christianity, be it Islam, this idea, be it Zoroastrianism, this idea of monotheism is a Johnny-come-lately nouveau idea, and yet somehow we've been convinced that it's the standard and the way it's always been. And we are a species with amnesia. And just like the September 23 thing was created by the Jesuits to counter the Reformation, and now all the children of the Reformation are preaching it, we've been mind warped not once, but at least twice by that reckoning.
Yeah. And, you got to ask yourself why, because it doesn't make sense. Listen, all right, I have come to this point that, all right, if in fact there was a cataclysm, we know that geologically, we know that the Earth, I think it was actually a pole shift. And I think that that's what happened.
And that's about the time. No, I'm thinking, when did the Neanderthal suddenly disappear? That was further back than that, though.
A little further back, but however, it would have been Cro-Magnon, most likely, or Denison.
Cro-Magnon?
Yes, and actually, it's actually thought that the Atlanteans were Cro-Magnon.
Yeah.
So,
and many people believe that I'm Irish, so this is relevant to me, that the ancient Gaelic Irish theology actually came out of India.
Well, it's the whole thing is that I believe the Adama that was created was a black man. I believe he was dark skinned, and the records say it as well. If you read the Bronze books, it's there. It's even So the question is, we know where the other races began to come from. They still don't know where the pale race came from.
Where do you think it came from?
I think that we were put here not by our. I'll just be very candid with you.
Not by normal evolutionary.
Yes, because it's interesting. Now, we didn't talk about this coming on, right?
No.
All right. So look what I wrote, folks.
The only thing you mentioned to me was that comment.
Yep.
So I'm like, boy, Wayne's really falling off the deep end this time. Why the RH factor? Oh, somebody, Red Rose Rocker, says the pale horse.
Could be. I don't know.
Interesting. Travis Thorpe says we're aliens.
Actually,
we actually are.
Actually, there is good evidence. Now going back to the secret societies, do you know what the Nazis were after? The Aryans? They had found some secret knowledge. They had actually gone back, and it's quite interesting. But they began to contend with this problem. Where did this contamination come from?
The contamination being what?
Well, I mean, the RH factor is, in fact, the rhesus monkey gene.
Right.
I don't care how you can argue it, but the fact is, it's in us.
So you're saying the RH factor is a contamination, a virus?
That's a good way of putting it. I think so. Listen, look at what you get. You have mothers that if they find that they're an RH positive and the baby comes in RH negative, someone's going to die if they don't get the, this is something we don't want to talk about in theology, in religiosity. We don't want to talk about it because it says, well, then how did it get here? I mean, you can't have a negative and a positive come from the same bloodline.
Interesting.
So we're missing something. We're missing a huge chapter to a 3-chapter book. And that chapter is that we figured out the middle because we're creating that, and we projected the end by our own religions, our own whatever. It's still that front part of the origin process. And if, in fact, the comet came in, wiped out 9/10 of the Earth, the survivors were there, there is the contention, in fact, that is there could very well be a master race that do, in fact, exist under the Earth.
And if you carry the whole Nazi connection on, you start talking about Antarctica and Hollow Earth and all that.
I challenge any one of our listeners, if you could afford it, try to go down there unannounced.
Yeah.
Now, we don't ask ourselves because, again, we like to put this into the conspiracy aspect. But you see, I look at it as a fact that it affects us. It goes back to my question. Why all the different gods?
So are the RH negatives or the RH positives the aliens?
Well, there's some aspect on that's more of the reptilian blood, is that apparently, I don't know about that. Listen, I know this, that there's many different races. There are different species.
Yeah.
And if you and I started this conversation,
we're afraid of the wrong thing, Wayne. It's not really the rapture that's coming. It's the raptor.
There you go. I love it. You see? So again, kind of getting this full circle. Number one, today's religions virtually eliminate the feminine factor. Wrong. Can't have that. You can't have a papa and a son. Mama has to be somewhere. And I guarantee you in my life, I know I go by the idiom that happy wife, happy life.
That's for sure.
So we get that wrong. Then we come in and we get into this crazy cockamamie idea, Jeff, that we think that we have the image of the one true God. But then I began to think, how much of an insult is that to these other cultures that have something far older than us and much more richer than us? Christianity is really the new kid on the block. I mean, we are so come Johnny lately and I'm surprised we even got a seat at the table, to be honest with you.
Well, we had the best weaponry, Wayne.
And that is?
We had the best guns and things to kill. Yeah. We were the most proficient at killing folks. So we killed everybody else. So
we wiped them out.
The
I Jeff, I get so frustrated at times when I talk to my Christian friends and I say, you guys don't get it. Our religion was built on the heap, the pile of corpses.
Yeah.
We know at least 200 million.
Yeah.
I just don't get it, my friend. I don't get why any religion is worth the death of our species.
It's not.
It's not. My wife and I were talking last night. I said, the interesting thing about the Hebrew God. And she said, what? Because she just gets this look in her like, okay, what are you going to be talking about? I said, he never attacked another country. The Hebrew God never violated a border. That border was consigned at Abraham. It was with definite boundaries and definitely geographical locations. And if you go through the children of Israel, as they went through their tribal point, as they moved into the land of Canaan, you will find that Yahweh never attacked another God.
Well, who did they take the promised land from?
Well, that was a genocidal situation. That gets back to the fact that this God that they served was apparently needing the blood sacrifices and us killing us. We're the blood sacrifice. He's
a blood magic working deity, and you're the only other person other than me that I've heard have the guts to say that out loud and in public.
It's a fact. It's a fact. Listen, we got to get our act together here, ladies and gentlemen. Listen, I don't care how you look at this. There's a video I did called I Pet Goat 2. Go and look at that. No, I'm serious. If you want to have a freaky experience in symbolism and future tailing, watch that video. And I did an hour commentary on it, Jeff. The fact is that we have got to get our act together. I think that we have ended one age and we've entered into another.
Absolutely.
The age of Pisces is over, folks. We're moving into Aquarius. The Germans knew this. They knew it in their, and in fact, the Kabbalah knows about it. So much of the occultism has been focused in at a particular time. And Jeff, I contend we're not only closing an age, we're closing a cycle.
And what are the implications of that?
Well, I think the vibration is increasing. Listen, if you know something about the Schumann resonance, that typically is at 7.8 megacycles. That's where it's hitting at, megahertz. It's now up into the 40s. Something is happening. Jeff, I recorded this week. Last Monday, I went outside walking my dog, And I kept on hearing this buzz. I mean, it was a low frequency and it would come in and out like a radio wave. I got the dog home, got the camera, and recorded about 2 minutes of it. And the people around me, because I live near a green belt, they were hearing it. What's going on?
Are you experiencing any vertigo?
Oh, at times, yes.
Yeah, ever since the full solar eclipse,
yeah,
I've been having these momentary bouts of vertigo where it just like, the only thing I can relate it to is when I used to get drunk. Sometimes I get so drunk the room would start spinning, and I get that feeling every now and then. I was on a radio show last night, Barbara DeLong, and she says that she thinks that's a sign. It's one of these ascension symptoms they talk about, and that's good. You got a download, and it's processing, and sometimes it overloads your mainframe, for lack of a better description.
Well, I'm learning what the Knights Templars were learning, which later was taught to the Rosicrucians, the Masons, and one other group, the Illuminati. Was that...
Be careful with your Freemason references. We have one in the chat room.
No. I mean, they have, it's a secret knowledge, and it's passed on, and even the initiates are not known. You have to get up there, definitely up into the 33 degree before you're going to really be exposed to this. But it exists. It exists in fragments. And what they were realizing was that there was an energy within us, each of us individually, that could be channeled and could begin to be collectively put together. And they learned this from what was Al-Banna, I believe, Al-Banna, A-L with the B-A-N-N-A. He was the last mystic of Islam. And he was taught by the Hebrews, who learned it from the Egyptians, who learned it from wherever. Interesting thing is that it was the Phoenicians that actually were the traders of this sacred knowledge. They traded pieces of it.
Well, they were the most most prodigious traders of all. They had the greatest navy. They went everywhere. And this is something we're talking about the Freemasons and people. Oh, it's secret knowledge and secret societies. And this thought just came to me, and it's so true because I get the same thing on my channel. People say, Jeff, where did you say this? Jeff, where did you say that? Jeff, what is the answer for this? Jeff, what is the answer for that? And I want to say the answer is on the channel. Do a little bit of study. And the thing about the Freemasons and some of these other societies is that which is easily accessed is too lightly valued. So there is something to be said for having to go through a period of initiation, to having to go through a period of understanding, and to having to stand the test of time in some instances to be able to gain knowledge and to do it yourself and not ask somebody and have them expect you expect them to just give it to you without any exertion of effort on your part.
Well, listen.
I feel better now.
Good. I think you're spot on because this needs to be learned. It needs to be understood. The tuition is going to be paid. And if you don't pay it, you're not going to be allowed in because you will never treat it. If it isn't costing you something of your soul, and in my case, Jeff, it was when that whole core, my inner core collapsed, when my religion collapsed, when I began to see through it. And I said, oh, crap. And I had to start building the pieces.
And far be it for me to quote David, who I think might have in fact been a golem if he did exist. But he said, I will not offer to God that which costs me nothing.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the idea that we're talking about.
And it even goes back to the great philosophies of the golden age. All those who enter in, know that seeking of knowledge is going to cost you. What is it? What did Solomon say? That with great knowledge comes great sorrow.
He did.
Yeah. And I know why. I mean, there's times when I kind of would think, my wife told me, she said, back when
there's a reason why they say ignorance is bliss, Wayne.
Yes. And that's what she was saying. She said it was so much easier back then. She said, you could get up in the morning, you say your few hallelujahs, because after all, you got this eternal sacrifice and, you can go right on through life. You got a free ticket.
You read your 2 or 3 chapters.
Yeah.
Pray your prayer wheel.
And I now we we take that same discipline, but now we've turned it over to the fact that, listen, meditation is, for me, is getting into that quiet place. And it's not about worshiping a deity. Can I say something this very bluntly? Here's my thought about God and worship. Why would a God create something just to worship him?
Anything that requires or wants worship is not a deity.
Bingo. Because you know what? If you got this ego thing, man, where you got to have all the people, you know, bowing and doing all that. Mm-hmm. No, I am a sentient being. I was brought into this world. I think that I am running a gauntlet. Maybe that's the only thing that the Paul really was probably speaking a moment of truth about, because the course of life is a gauntlet.
It is.
I mean, I told my listeners, I said, listen, if you get past the age of 60, you need to be congratulating yourself. And we need to look at people that are 60 and older. These are champions, folks. They got wisdom. Yep. Now they may be knuckleheads, but you know, we need to understand that we're losing a part of a knowledge and a wisdom.
Now, I had a lady on my show last night. She calls herself Priestess Rhonda. Priestess, I'm trying to remember the name of their show, but she's talking about people come to her and say, oh, I've been through all this. I've been through all that. I feel like I've just been such a victim. And she says, congratulations. If you've been through all that and you're still here, then you're
high five.
And that's so true. That is so true. And I mean, you don't even want a spouse or a boyfriend or a girlfriend who's needy. You know, I remember something that Jimmy Swaggart said to me one time. He said, Jeff, no matter how hot she is, somebody somewhere is tired of her crap. And it doesn't matter how wonderful and gorgeous and perfect they are, but if they are super needy all the time, they need that worship, they need that. Sooner or later, you get tired of it, and you're gonna move on. And if you don't want a spouse like that, or a boyfriend or a girlfriend like that, why in the world would you want a God like that?
Can you imagine that? I mean, I told them, I said, the thing that really began to awaken me was the scripture in Exodus, and I think it's Exodus 10, where, you know, Moshe is heading back, and it says Yahweh sought to kill Moshe.
Yep.
All right, time out. What? You know?
Well, when Yahweh says, I'm a jealous God, I'm a wrathful God, I'm an angry God, that's enough. I've had enough women like that in my life. I don't need a God like that in my life.
I like
the same thing with men. Obviously, that's been pointed out to me in the chat room.
Well, it's the joke that, you know, I heard about Abraham. Abraham comes down off the mountain with Isaac, and he calls in his chief manservant, and he says, bring all the other manservants into the tent. And they're sitting there, and so Abraham's explaining that he has a new name now, and that he's going to be serving this new God, which I still say is a Sumerian God, but anyway. And, you know, all the servants are just thinking, oh, this is great, man. We're going to be rich, et cetera, et cetera. He says, but there's one thing. And they're all going, what? And he says, well, you have to cut the head off of this particular part of your body. That's when the manservant said, say what?
That's when imagine a God that would ask that and require that.
Woo! I'm telling you.
It's nothing but blood sacrifice.
And so we get back to the whole thing. It comes down to it, Jeff. The purpose of life is about us individually. It's our journey. What have you learned? What are you believing, etc.? I think, though, we've missed one important element, and that is, what are we to do collectively? I mean, I'd love to see
roughly 10,000 years ago, your 12,800 time frame is when monotheistic religion was born.
That's when we started seeing the written record appear as well.
Yeah. So this whole thing has been a hijack of our species.
Yes, sir.
Every religion. Hijack of our species.
Exactly. And
every religion is a hijack of our species.
Jeff,
we need to get back to true spirituality.
Yes, sir. You said it. I didn't, but that is exactly the point. Something is not right. And you know what it's done? It's divided us. It's divided us.
And we think the answer is, oh, well, this religion's bad. I'm going to go to another religion. I mean, look at me. I went from standard Pentecostalism. Then I went to Seventh-day Pentecostalism. Then I dabbled in non-Pentecostal Sabbath worship. And I was going from frying pan to fire to fire to fire. It's not You don't need a different religion. You need something different than religion.
That's what exactly it. And they possess it right here. You know, the Christ taught this. He said, the kingdom of God dwells within. It's not this physical place. Heaven doesn't exist. That's what he said. You know, if you're living and you thinking that you're going to be so good, et cetera, to get into heaven, it doesn't exist. It's here.
That's right. That's right. And the reason why we have these things like September 23, Revelation 12 sign, all of these crazy fear-mongering, oh my God, tribulation, mark of the beast, chopping off heads, rapture, seals, vials, blood, sacrifice. The reason they have that is to keep our eyes off the ball, to keep us worried. Number one, to scare us back into church. And number two, to keep us from realizing that that solar eclipse opened up a new age for us. It's not an age of tribulation. It's an age of jubilation. And now we can leverage all of this fullness of the male and female deity like never before and really put the pedal to the metal and step up our spiritual ascension. And we need to quit listening to the Marzulis and the Clarks and the LaHays and the Jenkins and all these evangelical eschatologists and start listening to the still small voice of our own spirit, knowing that we're not filled with original sin, but we got the spark of divinity within. And we need to throw off the yoke of religion. I got to say this, and I hate to rant, but there's a famous verse where the Christ says, "Come unto me, all ye that are weak and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you, learn of me, for my yoke is easy, my burden's light." Wayne, when you read that verse in the Greek, it says, "Come unto me, all of you that are burdened down with religious rules, rituals, and exercises."
Yes.
"Take my yoke upon you, the way, the truth, the life, the peace that passes all understanding, the life and life more abundantly." The Christ himself said religion is the problem. And until we realize that and throw it all off, the baby and the bathwater, because they're all bad, and start a brand new paradigm. And we're giving this chance right now in this next 7-year period like never before in our age. And I'll be quiet now.
No, I'm just going to back this up with this. Listen, the infinite being is not this concept. I have it right up here. I wrote up here that God is a concept of the infinite being. And when I tell people this, I said, you know how to kill a God?
Quit worshiping him.
Exactly. Listen, if the 1.7 billion Christians that are saying they're Christians got up tomorrow and realized that the story is just this, it's a story, it's an allegory. That's what it is. It's how it was written. And it's a spell is what it is. But anyway, I'll guarantee you, would this God show up and say, "Hey, whoa, wait a minute. Now I'm going to punish you for the fact that you've now stopped believing in me"?
Wow.
Think about it.
Here's the thing that made it even so more real to me. I listened to Coast to Coast AM when L.A. Marzulli was on there. And I listened to L.A. Marzulli, supposedly a great Christian leader, great Christian teacher. And I listened to him talk about, George asked him, "Well, L.A., if the rapture does come, how many people is God really going to take home with him?" And I listened to L.A. Marzulli say, okay, there's 8 billion people on the planet. But George, only the people that are born again and spirit-filled are going to go and be taken by God. And I listened to L.A. Marzulli take 8 billion people and get himself down to less than 500,000 that would actually make this rapture. So out of 8 billion people, there's only 500,000 of them, less than 500,000 of them, that are acceptable to L.A. Marzulli's God. Well, I'll tell you one thing, cousin. If that is the truth about L.A. Marzulli's God, L.A. Marzulli's God is not the God, and I don't want nothing to do with that God.
And I'm just thinking, you know what? You get up there, and I know I'm being, mean on this, but I saw a bumper sticker years ago in Las Vegas, and it says, "Jesus loves you because everyone else thinks you're an asshole."
Exactly.
And the problem is that if that was going to happen, do you know what 500,000 assholes would be like?
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you what, you'd start your own war.
Yeah.
You ain't going to have no heaven up there, brother. And, and how, that is so elitism. Not only is it intellectual elitism, It's religious elitism. I mean,
It is.
it actually diminishes the human collective conscience.
It's the us for and no more syndrome.
Ooh, you know, when I hear you say that, my mind just goes, psh, what are these people talking about?
Yeah.
I mean, we all, listen, as a world, we all, when I say Nazis, immediately you're back there at the Holocaust. But you know what? What that man just said is even worse.
Oh, absolutely.
That just means that the rest of the 7 billion plus people here, we're toast. Well,
and
then
they
that
don't care.
exactly.
They don't care.
So what
But
I'm
in
going
the
to
same
say,
breath, he'll talk about the elites wanting to do population control when he just laid out the best population control agenda that's ever been conceived by the mind of man. And if a rapture ever does happen, it will happen as a manufactured false flag event towards population control, fueled and fed by idiots like L.A. Marzulli, convincing people that it's acceptable.
well,
Did I
that's
just say
almost,
idiots? I think I did.
that's the Georgia Guidestones. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. Lee Veltman just said Georgia Guidestones.
Yeah. See, you know, let me tell you the other thing I'm finding out, Jeff.
Did
Okay.
L.A. Marzulli write the Georgia Guidestones?
Or is he a Rosicrucian?
I believe he is a bought and paid for agent of the Jesuit mind control matrix.
Hey, and listen, those cats are getting desperate too.
They are, because there's too many people like you and me and these
Yeah.
people in this chat room starting to cause too much trouble and ask too many questions. When you start moving hurricanes and stuff, you start getting people's attention. So, cousin, if you're going to be in the world changing business is a booming, and you better be ready to boom with it.
I actually had a pastor.
And if you're not, stay on the porch.
Exactly. I had a pastor write to me and said that, you know, listen, he lost 2 of his congregation, it was a couple. And he said, you are the agent of the Antichrist. And I wrote back, I said, but did you answer their questions? He never wrote back.
Right.
And you know, listen, here's where the facade begins to crack. You got legitimate questions. We all have asked ourselves this, folks, if you be honest. When you got converted, you're still thinking, well, where'd the dinosaurs go? I mean, what? You know?
Don't you think dinosaurs weren't real, Wayne?
Well, exactly. And, you know, and then get this. I actually had one guy say, well, you know, they're talked about in the book of Job. Well, he does mention about a stegosaurus. I said, so now you're telling me that man was walking with dinosaurs. Oh, I didn't say that. Well, that's what you're saying Job said. You know? So
I'm not saying the rapture is going to happen on September 23rd, but all the signs sure point to that being true. Quote unquote, L.A. Marzulli.
Listen, the pact is that it's a distraction. What happens on the 24th? I think, let me just tell you what I think. I think that just you and I, Jeff, with our listeners, our collective consciousness alone could dispel that ever from happening.
Absolutely. I'm convinced that we are going to defeat the plans of Yahweh. He wants to launch a great false flag. He wants to launch a great ET, UFO, alien, plastic Jesus, Soylent Jesus invasion and take control of this planet again. But he's not going to be able to, and he's not going to be able to because of people like you and me and all these people that are listening and supporting and sharing their consciousness. We will defeat Yahweh. I said it here. I said it. I mean it. And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
You're going to go to hell.
You know, what did Milton say? Better a king in hell than a servant in Yahweh's heaven.
Yeah. For some reason, I just had a mental image of Robin Williams in Good Morning Vietnam when he was doing, you're going to go to hell for saying that. God's going to come out and get you, brother. You know? But I believe that the ultimate infinite being, whatever it is out there, is this, folks, is that we are to eventually get the big boy pants on, hike them up, and let's get on with this. Listen, if we can come together in thought, on any one thing agree. I always like what the Christ said. You know, if two or more agree as touching anything on earth,
Yeah.
and we get back into that multiplication principle. So what do we have? A couple hundred people listening, maybe. You know, if you had that and you multiply that one times you and I, Jeff, that's 1,000. Two can put 10,000. Let's just do a project. We got the opportunity. I think that I would like to just see calm come to St. Louis. I like to just see it like a veil that would begin. Consider this. I'm pouring honey out. And as you let the honey hit and you start letting it drizzle and everything, it spreads out. And I say that we just think calm there. Something that we can all agree upon.
Just speak calm to St. Louis.
Yeah, just calm.
I just read that even U2 canceled a concert there because of the inability to provide security for such a large venue.
Yeah. So, you know, I used to live in St. Louis. It's a great town. It really is.
That's right. You had some dealings with George there in St. Louis.
Yep. George with Liquid Productions, and I was with Crawford at the time. And
so let's do that. Let's do a group consciousness experiment on bringing peace to St. Louis. Should we do it at a certain time every hour?
11. You did the thing, I think 11 after the hour.
Do it 11 after the hour every hour. We just missed this one. But we're just going to speak calm and peace to St. Louis.
Yeah, and here's what I do, folks. I see the arch. And that arch is something that I can visualize. I can focus my attention on the arch, and I can just think calm on that. And that's how I do it. You know, because you need something for the mind, the inward mind at the back of your brain. You need to have something that you can focus on. And then from there, you can take a word and you can apply it.
Right. So we can focus on that arch and bringing peace to St. Louis at 11 minutes after the hour, every hour.
Okay.
Brooks Rocker says what's happening in St. Louis. Well, you're going to have to check out a news source to find that out. It's a lot of unrest over a police officer killing someone and getting away with it.
Yep. So listen, hate never solves the problem, Jeff. You and I both know that, my friend. We know that. And we always want to speak
the problem, not the solution.
Yeah. You know, we always think love, but I think today love has become a word that's become so diminished in its meaning because it's applied to everything. That's what I like about harmony.
Harmony is good.
Yeah, because, you know, if I can live in harmony with you, Jeff, well, then that means I'm going to respect you.
Absolutely.
I'm not going to want to harm you.
Yeah.
In fact, I would do everything to do what I could do to protect.
Yep.
And if I could,
the simple words of the great American prophets, Bill and Ted.
Yes.
Excellent to each other.
Excellent to each other. In fact, we all ought to go watch that.
We should. That Socrates was a smart guy.
Yes, he was. He kind of knew some stuff, didn't he?
He did.
And that's, I think, and listen, that gets back to the simple subject is this. It's about alchemy. What the Knights Templars were about was the transformation of the human consciousness through the use of alchemy. And
that's right.
Now I'm studying alchemy because
that's so weird. Have you been listening to me? We've been studying alchemy too. It's just there's so much synchronicity going on, and alchemy is not, you know, it's so much more than trying to turn iron into gold. It's changing things. Yes. And it's actually the application of charging this ether that's around us. It's a real process. It's not just woo-woo.
It is taking from the ether, and we have to make and it's what the alchemy.
I just said we're studying alchemy, Thorpe. Come on, trying to keep up.
Is the fact that the alchemy begins and it's not only a transformation, it's a transitioning. And it's a transposition. And they say once it starts and once you make that commitment in the soul, they say something happens, Jeff.
Yeah.
They say that there is it's magic is what they called it. It's the magic. It's soul magic.
And Caroline hits a good point too. Sometimes righteous indignation is called for, rising up to reclaim our sovereignty in our world.
Yeah. Listen, if we have fought and spilt enough of our own blood fighting each other, just think if we got together and say, we're going to fight the deities, challenge them to manifest themselves. Otherwise, we're just shadow boxing and we're hurting each other.
How about that, Wayne? Challenging the deities.
Oh,
taking on
good.
taking on the Elohim, taking on Yahweh, taking on these deities that don't have our interest at heart.
Yeah.
And they're afraid of us.
You know, ladies and gentlemen, if you look at even if you take the 6,000 year time frame, all right, let's go 10,000 for the written history.
Mm-hmm.
Jeff, we should have evolved consciously to the point where we should be making worlds out of the ether. We should be able to have peace on earth here. There is no need for lack. It's just there's no need for it. That's where I say, and I say that then who's held us back? Why have they held us back? That energy is going somewhere. And I don't like what I see out my window today. I don't like to see how humanity as a species, we're divided against each other. I mean, it's crazy.
You know, Caroline makes another point that goes to what we were talking about earlier, Wayne, about how to defeat a god. Caroline says, how about we build a new world by ignoring the deities?
Ooh, high five.
Absolutely.
High five, Caroline. Yes.
Like Caroline, we still have to get you on the channel to talk about UT. Anytime you're ready, let me know.
I love that. That's a great idea.
Well, we're way over time, Wayne.
Yeah. Well, it's been fun, Jeff.
It has been fun.
You know, it's always.
What do you have to say to us in closing?
I love what we've just done. Number one, St. Louis, harmony.
11 after.
11
Peace,
after.
harmony to St. Louis.
And I love challenging the gods. Challenging
just ignoring them.
Ignoring them. In fact, I love that even more. I think, you know, let me just say, when a person
drive Travis Thorpe crazy, but that's okay. That's a short trip anyway.
So betrayal. You know what's the worst thing than betrayal? Indifference.
Indifference, absolutely. Even when you get broken up with, you know, you break up with somebody and they just write you off and forget about you. That hurts the worst.
So I say that they've been doing it to us.
Let's do it to them. Absolutely.
Yeah. So Jeff, what are you going to go this week on?
You know, I've got so much going on that I don't really know where to keep going. And we're talking about the American Book of the Dead, which I'm really calling the Western Book of the Dead.
That's good. You know,
we've got to learn how to. What good is it if we don't know how to get out of this labyrinth after we die? If it's just coming back again, all of this is just rearranging deck chairs on the proverbial Titanic. So we've got to learn what we can do to give ourselves the choice to do what we want to do after we're done with this life. And that's our main focus right now.
I like what Robert Lanza wrote in Biocentrism. He says, if you don't get your act here together, get yourself prepared, that when you go through this portal on the other side, there may not be anyone there to take care of you.
There isn't anyone to take care of you.
And then that's going to leave you adrift.
Yes.
Exactly. And he says, what happens?
Do it yourself.
He says, and I like what he said, he says, you create, at least in the beginning, on the other side, what you take from here.
Yep.
So if your perception is this heaven and hell situation, guess what? You're already painting it for yourself.
Exactly right. You might as well just get ready to be into the soul farm. Yeah, the Tibetan Book of the Dead, the Western Book of the Dead is kind of a retelling of the Tibetan Book of the Dead and ideas that are easy for the Western mind to understand and assimilate.
Yeah, because my Western mind, even when I read Hebrew names, I'm going, what?
Yeah.
You know? Or I'm eating, you know, any other kind for it. I'm going, what?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, good. I'll tune in for that.
Yeah, we appreciate you being with us. We'll keep doing this every Sunday. And remember, at 11 minutes after the hour, we're speaking peace and calm to St. Louis. Go over and check out the R. Wayne Steiger channel. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you hit the bell so you know when Wayne is coming on.
And by the way, Jeff, YouTube has been they had a malware attack. And I'm going to have to do it with my subscribers. You have to go back in, make sure you're subscribed. And if you've checked on to be alerted when a program comes on, you have to redo that.
Okay, so there was a malware attack. So make sure you're subscribed, and make sure you hit the bell again.
Yep.
So you can make sure that you're subscribed and that you've hit the bell.
Yep.
Because a malware attack did evidently cause some mess in that. And you know, my kind of the latest thing for me, Wayne, is to say to people and encourage people to stay fearless, my friends.
Yes, yes, folks. There's nothing to fear. I know it can be like that, but listen, what was it in the movie Dune? Fear is the mind killer.
What movie?
Dune. D-U-N-E.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And so when Paul put his hand in there, he had to keep telling himself is that fear is the mind killer.
Absolutely.
You know,
we are divine. We are sovereign. We are free. It's about time we act like it.
Listen, you want to get over your fear? Here's a good experiment to do this week. Go down and, like, if you have a basement, turn out all the lights so that you have no ambient light anywhere. And I want you to stand in there for 15 minutes. You're going to find out real quickly what the imagination, what is really in the focus of your heart coming out here. You'd be surprised at how many things begin to move around.
Interesting. That's a very interesting experiment in consciousness.
It is. It works,
Absolutely.
folks. Yeah. Try it.
Well, folks, thanks so much for being here. I salute all of you that are here seeking after knowledge. Remember, you don't have original sin within. You got the spark of divinity. Love yourself. Love your neighbor. Let's be excellent to each other. And above all else, for Wayne Steiger, I'm Jeffrey Daugherty, the Christian Whistleblower, saying, let's stay fearless, my friend. Wayne, stay right there for 1 second. I'll be right with you, okay?
All right, buddy.
Take care, folks.
Bye-bye.